third and sex cells, so that's it.
What's the current status of the tourism sector?
The tourism sector has recovered year on year when we measure 2015 to 2016 by about 16.7%. And this is the overall recovery for both international and domestic.
What has significantly driven this growth? Is it the domestic tourism side of things, or is it the foreign tourist inflows?
In the past year, domestic has driven the tourism sector significantly. But also we've seen a significant growth in our key source markets. One of the things that happened is in the past year, the US surpassed the UK as our #1 source market. We had markets such as India, such as China, such as Uganda coming up in the top 5 source markets that we have. So from an international perspective, we've seen growth in that sector. The US market is a big market. So if they are #1 source market, you can imagine that it makes a huge difference. We're looking at numbers of about 97,000 people, right? Which makes a huge difference, right? When we come to domestic tourism has grown by over 22%. And what's driven that is one of the things that we found is Kenyans have become slightly more aware about the opportunities that are available to them in terms of travel in and around Kenya.
Government has invested a lot of money in marketing initiatives like Magical Kenya, Making It Kenya. Was it a worthwhile investment?
What Magical Kenya enabled us to do is to have a brand that we can use to market the tourism product that Kenya has, which is not necessarily the Kenya brand. So there needs to be a differentiation between the tourism brand, which is Magical Kenya, and the brand Kenya as a brand. So in terms of that, Magical Kenya having permeated people's minds across the world is actually a very strong brand.
Have these marketing initiatives achieved what they were set out to?
So in a recent research that we did, we found that Magical Kenya as a promise for the tourism product in Kenya works really well, because it focuses our consumers to the experience and not necessarily all of the other socio-economic factors that happen in the country.
It's already an election year and the political temperatures are running high. As a board, what have you done to counter negative publicity that may emanate during this electioneering period?
The temperatures are already high, yes. What we're doing as a board is making sure that we continue to message. Number one, we keep our stakeholders informed about what's going on. So we inform impartially about, one, areas of concern, but we also want to continually remind people of what they have as a Kenya people, the product that they have as a country. Let's stop behaving as if during elections we don't have all of the beauty and the natural resources and the diversity in tourism that we have. We do. Is even our local or our international guests will, at the opportunity that they have, speak to the people who are in the market, either whether they're journalists, whether they're friends, whether they're family. That is the basis on which they make the information that is the basis on which they make the decisions that they make. So we have to make sure that everybody has a reasonable amount of information about what's going on. Obviously, we urge both our politicians and the people who are obviously vying for various positions to taper the messaging, right? And also consider the impact of the messages that they give, because it affects not only our industry, but it affects the economy in general.
Pricing of tour facilities and travel fare is one of the major hindrances that Kenyans, rather domestic tourist sites towards traveling, or rather hinder them from traveling and seeing sites and places locally. What is the board doing to ease this cost?
What we're doing is there was actually a fund that was put in place for counties, and it's county marketing in tourism. And the way that the tourism board is supposed to support this is because the county is best placed to understand what their offerings are. We're urging them to package for us what are basically the diversity in tourism products that they have in their county. We then come together and run almost like a roadshow. Similar to what we do in our international markets, is to run a roadshow in their region, so that we're able to expose that diversity in tourism to Kenyan people in a way that they can consume it without actually having gone to the region. What that does is you immediately start to look at that region as a possibility of a place that you can have that holiday.
Talks about having direct flights and also chartered flights coming in. So far, where are we at?
We've made inroads in chartered flights, right, through the Charter Incentive Program, right, where we have been able to successfully sign on 5 charters that come directly to Mombasa. There are various charters that are coming from different places. But the point is that the conversation needs to be sort of broader than that, and it entails opening our skies to other airlines. Obviously, there's concern around how that affects our local carrier, which is our primary concern. But there's also the discussion around understanding what will benefit the country overall in terms of being able to grow our industry, but also ease the ability to move the people who want to visit us into our country. A charter is a good idea, but it is not a complete solution to the problem, right? It is the conversation just needs to be broadened into what do we do with the number of airlines that are able to fly directly into our country.
Despite the growth, the subsector is yet to achieve the numbers we saw in 2011. So in your own words, what are the main challenges that the sector is facing?
The major challenges are that we must get away from this rise, recovery and decline. Recovery and decline. And you know there are a number of factors that affect that. There's not only elections, there's terrorism, there's alerts, there's infrastructure, there's a lot of other economic factors, right, that affect the smooth trajectory of our industry. And the way we can get to the numbers that we had in 2010, 2011 is to ensure that we have continuous growth. How do we achieve continuous growth? Everything affects tourism.
What is your take with the current state of affairs in Laikipia, where we are seeing investor and resident conflict?
I think it suffice to say that community and those investors live together, not for 6 months, but have been living together over time. There's a situation where there's drought, and therefore it means that there has to be some understanding and collaboration in terms of being able to facilitate both sides, both the community as well as the investor. And we were there, I think 2 weeks ago, and there's an understanding by the investors and the community that they need to coexist.
What are your expectations of the hospitality industry during your tenure?
What I would want to achieve in our tenure is to ensure that Kenya becomes the #1 tourism destination in Africa, first of all, but more importantly, in the world for Africa. So when you're looking to come to Africa, Kenya must be the #1 tourism destination for all of our markets, because it is possible. We have the product.